We begin this episode seeing a flashback of Sir Arlen flashing us with his third leg and urinating after waking up next to a lady of the night. Dunk's voiceover begins and he proceeds with describing the type of man Sir Arlen was. We get a montage of their time together, including a scene of them sparring. We transition into the current day and we see that Dunk is speaking with Lord Tyrell in hopes that he would remember his deceased sire so he can vouch for him as a knight. Unfortunately, Lord Tyrell tells Dunk he doesn't remember him. Dunk walks away looking defeated. Next, we see Egg walking with Dunk and he asks, "Was he a shit knight?" Dunk rejects Egg's notion, but Egg responds, "He must be if no one remembers him." Egg basically tells him this is embarrassing and he should find another way to get into the tourney. Suddenly, we hear horns and see House Targaryen banners in the distance while their bannermen approach Ashford Town. Egg looks a little concerned and tells Dunk he should take the horses to the stable. I wonder why Egg was so quick to get the hell out of Dodge when he saw those Targaryen banners. An announcer announces the arrival of the royal family and we see Aeron Targaryen approach the stable and assume Dunk is a stable boy and tells him to take care of his horse. Dunk corrects him and tells him he's a knight. Aeron dismisses him and goes on about his business. Two royal knights approach Dunk and one asks if there's a decent place to shit. Dunk tells him no and learns the royal knight came from a small folk stock of fishers. I think this gave Dunk hope that he could rise above his station. He sees a servant enter a door and follows her into a building that leads him outside of a room where the royal family was getting settled, but conversing about two of the princes being missing. Mekar Targaryen notices Dunk outside of the door and demands that he reveal himself. He enters the room and announces himself while bowing to the royal family. He expresses to Baelor Targaryen that he would like to participate in the tourney and asks if he could legitimize him as a knight after Baelor confirmed he remembered Sir Arlen. Baelor legitimizes him and tells him if he wasn't kin to his fallen sire, he can't have his sigil on his armor, and that he should have a new sigil made that represents himself. Dunk is super grateful and happily leaves the room. I'm glad Baelor essentially tells Dunk to step up and begin his own legacy. Sir Arlen's character was clearly questionable, so I believe it's time to let him go. Next, he and Egg approach Tansel after watching one of her performances and ask if she can paint a sigil on his shield of a tree with a shooting star flying above it. She agrees and Dunk thanks her. Dunk appears to have a little crush on this young lady. I'm interested in seeing what she adds to the story. Next, we see him and Egg have a heart-to-heart while watching a tug-of-war match and sipping on ale. I hope Egg's little ass has juice in his cup. Lionel Baratheon comes over and asks Dunk to provide him some assistance in his tug-of-war match. Dunk obliges him, and we get a fun scene of Dunk and Egg playing tug-of-war. I laughed so hard when little Egg wrapped his legs around the rope. They won the match and celebrated the victory. This was a nice bonding moment for Dunk and Egg. We transition into the night and we see Dunk sell one of his horses to pay for his new battle armor. Afterwards, he has a drink with Egg and expresses his ambitions to move up in life and states he can possibly be a knight for the royal family. Egg brings him back to reality and asks if he thinks House Targaryen would just hire anyone. Dunk explains he met a king's guard who came from a family of fishermen. Egg reveals his familiarity with the guard and says his father owns half the ships in Westeros. Poor Dunk. That guard didn't give him the full story and left out the fact that he came from some form of wealth. Suddenly, a horn erupts, and little Egg says, "It's time!" He and Dunk and the rest of the crowd run to view our first joust of the season. He and Dunk appear to be having a good time, but suddenly, I guess the realization of what he was about to enter hit Dunk, and a look of doubt appears on his face. In the final scene, we see Egg playing by himself as Dunk appears to be in deep thought while sitting by a campfire. Egg notices he seems a bit down and asks, "Something to matter, sir?" Sulking, he asks, "Do great knights live by the hedges and die by the side of a muddy road?" He goes on to explain how Sir Arlen was a drunk and a whore. Also, he was a knight for many years but never a champion. He continues this sobering moment and explains, "We weren't kin, but he kept me like we were. He raised me to be an honorable man. Yet all those noble lords can't remember his name." He pauses and lets the space fill with a moment of silence. "His name was Sir Arlen of Pennytree. On tomorrow, We will show them what his hand has wrought. The episode fades to black. This was a great episode. We got to learn more about who Sir Arlen was as a person and got to see Dunk see him through a more realistic lens. We finally got to meet more Targaryens of this time period, and I'm looking forward to seeing what role they'll play in this story. I'm so glad Baelor Targaryen did Dunk a solid and legitimize him as a knight. I predict the missing princes are Egg and Darren, who we saw in last week's episode. The final scene was great, and the actor delivered the monologue perfectly. You can feel the weight of him coming to terms with who his former sire really was as he begins to forge his own legacy. This scene alone made me rate this episode a solid A. If you like this review, please like, comment, share, and subscribe.